All right, we'll get you that in a short while from now, but at present we are taking you live to the 9th edition of Raisina Dialogue. India's Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal is addressing a panel discussion.
iPhone miracle.
Thank you, Ashok, and thank you, Raisina Dialogue, for giving me this opportunity to engage with such a wonderful set of people. I think the India story can only be understood when you see it in the perspective of what we went through over the last 20, 25, 30 years. In 1991, the then Prime Minister, Mr. Narasimha Rao, who has recently been conferred the country's highest civilian award, the Bharat Ratna, initiated the first flush of reforms. Sadly, around 3 years into his government's tenure, he lost the momentum, and we kind of just started with a few initiatives and once again went into a phase of deep uncertainty and coalition governments. 1998, our situation was extremely serious. The macroeconomy was almost in a crisis. There was lack of faith in what the situation in the country was. Foreign exchange reserves were down, and we had a series of problems when Mr. Vajpayee came into government. High inflation, low growth, high interest rates, the typical problems. From 98 to 2004, even though Mr. Vajpayee ran a coalition government, he did bring the economy back on track. And if you recall the year 2003-04, the country had got into a trade surplus after many, many years. Interest rates were low. Inflation was moderate. Foreign exchange reserves had tripled in the 6 years that Mr. Vajpayee was there. FDI had started coming in. And in a sense, his government actually brought the economy back on stream. Sadly for the nation, 2004 he did not win. We got a coalition, an even weaker coalition, with the Central Party having very few seats. I think it was 147 or so at that point of time, out of 543. And a ragmatag coalition of so many parties that government was riddled over 10 years of being in power with a variety of complexities, corruption scandals, once again brought the economy back on its knees in that decade, once again brought growth down to 4% in the year 2013-14. Inflation went up to double digits between 11 and 12 or 12 and 13. Interest rates shot up to the skies. Small borrowers particularly paid as high as 15 and 17%. Banks were under stress for a lot of bad loans giving, possibly under political pressure, so much so that they had started evergreening loans only to keep their books intact. And the net NPAs and evergreen loans collectively crossed into double-digit figures, in many cases as high as 13 and 14% of the bank's credit portfolio. Foreign exchange reserves were stressed, so much so that in August of 2013, the rupee had fallen to 68 rupees to a dollar. And our foreign exchange reserves were at an abysmally low level of maybe 6 months of import. And there were concerns whether there could be a run on the rupee. The then finance minister, in his wisdom, borrowed at very high interest rates, FCNRB bonds, if you recall. We got $34 billion, which artificially did pull the rupee to higher levels, around 58, which we got in 2014. But that was an artificial scenario. We had to repay those $34 billion with high interest post-2014. He left behind a lot of unpaid bills in terms of food subsidy, in terms of oil bonds. There was a sense of complete breakdown of the government's finances. Interest rates had again shot up to high levels. Inflation was up to 8 or 9% in 14. Foreign exchange reserves were very moderate. Our exports were kind of getting stagnant. And all in all, the country had lost steam. Corruption scandals were tumbling out day after day. And the then Prime Minister had an excuse saying that these were the compulsions of coalition politics, and was almost helpless in trying to bring the economy, the morale, or the governance structures into good shape. Prime Minister Modi inherited in that sense a very, very severe crisis in 2014. In his wisdom, and rightly so, he did not bring this out to the fore until only last month, because at that point of time, it was necessary to present to the world a sense of confidence, a sense of belief, and give the world confidence that India was ready to change, reform, perform, and transform the country. We have used the last 10 years on a twin track. On the one hand, strengthening the macroeconomic fundamentals. On the other hand, ensuring that welfare reaches the last man at the bottom of the pyramid, so that the basic needs of every individual can be broadly taken care of. Gone are the days when an Indian was concerned about food, clothing, shelter, healthcare, education. Gone are the days when infrastructure projects were long delayed, cost overruns, massive cost overruns, the consumers deprived of the benefit of huge government initiatives announced but not really brought to fruition in terms of implementation. So therefore, what we inherited in 14 was a period where private investments were down, government didn't have the money to invest, and the first few years were focused on getting the economy back on track. It was in these trying circumstances that Prime Minister Modi launched the Make in India initiative. He initiated the Startup India movement. He got Digital India onto the Indian map. And through a series of initiatives, which very often I call like beads in a necklace, we were able to bring the economy back on track. We are today the fastest growing large economy, moved from the 11th position to the 5th position, slated to be the 3rd largest economy by 2027. In the most trying circumstances, when developed nations are seeing never before inflation, India has been moderate in its inflation. In fact, I would say low. Our average decadal inflation for 10 years is about 5.25%. Lowest ever in our 75 years of independence. Our interest rates did go up because of the post-Ukraine war situation and high interest rate increases that the Fed did in the US and other European countries followed. But we do believe that recent trends of inflation, which show that inflation is fast moving downwards, about 5-ish% now, expected to be 4% for the next fiscal. We do believe that the economy is really in good shape. Foreign exchange reserves have doubled in the last 10 years. Rupee is performing better than any other emerging market. And in this situation, coupled with the large infrastructure investment, my sense is that Make in India has arrived. Several initiatives of the government like production-linked incentive, ensuring the refund of any unremitted taxes and duties on our exports, our effort to encourage both public and private investment, both in infrastructure and manufacturing, the increasing imports which give confidence to investors about the domestic demand, the fact that 1.4 billion people and a young population at that, with their basic needs taken care of, is now aspirational. Aspirational for the good things of life. He has a small TV, he wants a larger TV. Women are leading development, so they come out into the formal workforce. A man, woman or a machine replaces the work they were doing at their home. So greater demand for washing machines, microwaves, dishwashers, all of these are being seen. All in all, this aspirational young India is driving demand. We are enjoying the fruits of a young population, the demographic dividend, which is helping us bring talent to the fore, both in management or workman skills. We have a situation where we have a strong, decisive leadership which believes in transformational initiative and change. And we are not one of those who have closed the doors to international engagement. We are in fact opening our doors wider. We are going into free trade agreements with the modern world, with the developed world, so that there's more competition. We strongly believe that subsidies are not going to run the country for a long period of time. A subsidy can only kickstart, like you do for a scooter or a two-wheeler, can only kickstart and give it momentum. Ultimately, the nation will work on Michael Porter's theory of competitive advantage, or maybe Ricardo's theory of comparative advantage. And I think that's what today India presents to the world, a country full of self-confidence, self-reliance, the ability to engage with the rest of the world from a position of strength. And that's the new India that, friends, we can all be proud to be a part of. That's the new India that Prime Minister Modi has offered to the world. And I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that over the next 25 years in our Amrit Kal, we'll add $25 to $30 trillion to our GDP and make this one of the best periods in India's history, an opportunity not to be missed by any investor or any business person.
Minister, thank you. You've taken us through the past 10 years, how the Modi government first repaired the economy and then has started to lift the momentum. You spoke about Make in India, the moment having finally arrived. Building internal resilience, building internal capacities has been a feature of the Modi government's policies, especially post-COVID. Is there an inherent tension between building internal resilience and capacities and embracing global value chains? And this is not just a unique Indian problem. Many countries are coping with this, are grappling with this problem. How are we coping?
Not at all. As I just said, we are willing to engage with the world. We have confidence in the abilities of our business persons. We have the confidence in our ability to be competitive. We do believe that economies of scale, the large domestic market, coupled with our ability to innovate, to do good R&D, to come up with solutions for the problems of the business world or the people through our young startups, all of these initiatives, and our focus on bringing down logistics costs through massive investments in infrastructure, led by the government, but now also being supplemented with private investments. All of these initiatives will certainly make India the best place to do business in. Our effort to improve the lives of the people through ease of living will make India the best place to live in, and a good, honest government led by Prime Minister Modi will make India a safe place to do business in, where you can hold your head high and do an honest day's work, earn an honest day's living, and live a good life with family value systems, with our rich culture, our heritage, our traditions, supplementing economic activity. In fact, recently the Prime Minister said the future of India is not only going to be about the economy, it's also going to be about our rich culture. It's also going to be about art and literature. So it's a wholesome development that we wish to offer to the people of India, something with the founding fathers of our party, particularly our ideologue Deen Dayal Upadhyay, who was one of the founders of the Jan Sangh, the predecessor to the Bharatiya Janata Party, had articulated as integral humanism. No human being can be satisfied only with material wealth. A human being wants complete 360-degree satisfaction. His family plays a role in that. Material or money plays also a role. But unless he gets satisfaction in a variety of other human dimensions, no person can be completely happy. So it's the happiness of our people that we are focusing on.
Minister, your government, or Mr. Modi's government and your ministry in particular, have shown great ambition and openness in pursuing economic integration with bilateral trading agreements with the UAE, the GCC, Australia. Why are trade negotiations with the UK and the EU proving more complicated?
Well, I think we should never rush trade negotiations. Trade negotiations are going to impact the country for years and years to come. So in a way, you crystal gaze into the future when you are doing any trade negotiation. While it may sound very political, but I've gone through some of the negotiations that have happened 12 years, 13 years ago, and some free trade agreements made before our government came in. And I've also discussed with stakeholders, and what I find is a very dismal picture. I find not adequate due diligence was done about the nation's interests. We find that many of those agreements don't have balance between our interests and other countries' interests. Many of those agreements never visualize that India could become a powerful country. So we would negotiate from a position of weakness, assuming India will always be what we were 12 years ago, the situation which we inherited. And also in some cases being in a little bit of a rush to enter into an FTA. This government has never done that. We enter into negotiations with our eyes wide open. We do extensive stakeholder negotiations. In fact, to the point where I believe some of the stakeholders have started telling me that you need not call us so often and need not have so many meetings. We give you a carte blanche that we know you will, this government, Prime Minister Modi's government will look after our best interests. We do a lot of interministerial consultations. We've crystal gazed into the future and we can see that India offers the best business opportunity. No other country, and if I may dare say in the history of mankind, there's never been a better business opportunity than what India offers in the next 25, 30 years as we reclaim our lost glory. And therefore, sometimes trade negotiations take time because the other side takes time to understand what really is happening in India, how the India story is panning out, how new India is emerging. And some people also live in a colonial mindset of the past. So it takes us some more time to get them to understand that ground realities have changed. What is on offer on their side is not at all comparable to what we are offering to the world. And therefore, unless it's a very equitable, balanced, and I would say fair trade agreement, India does not rush into trade agreements anymore.
Well put. Minister, how is India responding to non-tariff barriers and industrial policy measures such as the Inflation Reduction Act in the US or the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism in the EU? Do these concern you? Are these challenges? Are these opportunities?
You know, my late father used to once often tell me, and once he had articulated it very well, that if there were no challenges, probably we ministers also would not be required. Anybody else could run the ministry. He had said it, of course, in the context of business, that we have to take bold decisions. We have to be prepared for every challenge. And as you may be aware, Prime Minister Modi is one person who has converted every challenge, every crisis into an opportunity. And therefore, I think for us, these are issues of concern. We note what is happening in other parts of the world, but India will be a responder in a free and fair manner within the rules of international trading to all of these issues. Where we have to retaliate, we will retaliate. Where we have to take countermeasures, we'll take countermeasures. Where we have to have conversations, discussions and solve issues bilaterally, we'll discuss and solve them. And where we have to take it up legally, we will do that. But I can assure you, each one of these will only land up providing India even more opportunity in the future. I can share with you, for example, if we take the CBAM, for example, that's been a matter of concern, various parts of the country, different businesses. Now, CBAM is something we will take up very strongly within the rules of WTO. We'll be addressing that issue bilaterally also with the European Union, but simultaneously, we'll also strengthen ourselves and prepare ourselves of how we are going to, should that become a reality, how we are going to convert this also to our advantage. We have plans. I cannot disclose all our plans, but I can assure each and every person in India that Prime Minister Modi and his team will ensure that Indian business does not suffer, and we are right on top of issues such as this. I don't know whether many of your colleagues or many of the friends present here are aware. India and the US had 7 trade disputes at the WTO. Over the years, we've been adversaries on many issues at the World Trade Organization. Over the last 2 years, we worked relentlessly with the United States. Ms. Catherine Tai, the US Trade Representative, and I had taken a task that let's explore the possibility of settling and setting off these issues bilaterally. In any case, the WTO dispute resolution mechanism is kind of stalled at the moment. And I'm happy to share with you that through relentless effort and trust, and I believe the operative word is trust, when two people work with a position where we trust each other and we respect each other, then it's always easy to find a solution. And we have been able to resolve all 7 disputes bilaterally, so that 2 major countries, the United States and India, 2 countries who are normally having a lot of trade disputes, today have 0 trade dispute at the World Trade Organization between US and India.
Minister, my final question, since you referenced the World Trade Organization in your previous answer, it's believed, and in a sense, that the World Trade Organization is going through a bit of a midlife crisis. Okay, and many countries are wondering whether it is serving their purpose. How important is WTO in our external engagement strategy as India? And is it serving the purposes of India and of the global south? In particular, next week you travel to Abu Dhabi for the ministerial. What message will you carry?
First of all, I would like to join issue. Please don't call it a midlife crisis, because post the midlife crisis, there's always an end life. So I would rather call it a situation of concern. I would rather prefer to call it an organization getting into adulthood or into the teens, so that we have a long life ahead of us, because I do strongly believe that the World Trade Organization, for all its problems, for all its difficulties, for all its shortcomings and fault lines, has played an important role in setting robust rules of business and having fair play amongst trading nations, and at least having a platform in which we can have a dialogue, debate, and come up with solutions as they arise. You may be aware the MC12 in Geneva was a resounding success in 2022, and largely because of India. India played the role of bringing the developing and less developed countries and the developed countries on the same platform, resolved a number of differences, came out with 8 outcome documents. And I can assure you, while some countries initially thought India was the problem or India was causing a blockage of outcomes, end of the day, it was only because of India and our friendly countries like South Africa, Indonesia, the emerging markets, the developing countries, that finally that became one of the most successful ministerials. We actually celebrated the end of it cutting a cake for both the Director General's birthday and mine, which falls on the same day. But be that as it may, there are significant problems in the WTO. There are concerns about how it will operate. There's an attempt to even introduce elements into the WTO which are certainly not a part of world trade as such. So India is very much engaged with all the partner countries, bilaterally, in smaller groups, and of course at the larger forum, to ensure that the guiding principles on which the World Trade Organization was formed are respected, maintained, and continue to help us have an organized and free and fair trade across the world. The dispute resolution mechanism, World Trade Organization reform, several issues that have been agitated or finalized over the years need to be brought to conclusion. So there's a very heavy agenda. I do hope other countries also come to the table with a positive attitude, as does India. Other countries also are willing to listen to us and other less developed and developing countries' concerns and give free and fair solutions to the problems.
Thank you, Minister. That was an excellent tour of the horizon of India's economic hopes, aspirations and priorities, and what the future may hold. Thank you very much for being with us. I'd request you to give applause to the Minister for his remarks, and I'll hand you over to the organizers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
It was wonderful to be at the Raisina Dialogue, and Ashok, you are absolutely wonderful as always. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister. It's